What's going on, movie fans? My name is Michael Weer. I love talking about movies, and sometimes movies can be very surprising. And what I mean by that is that sometimes you see a trailer for a film and you get very excited, but other times you see a trailer for a film and it doesn't move the needle at all on your excitement, the whole job of a trailer. And so you go into a new film with either low expectations or no expectations at all. You're just there because it's a new film. Maybe it's in a genre you like the horror or superhero genre, but then when you sit down to watch the film, oh my gosh, are you surprised? You get out of the film and you're messaging your friends saying, you've got to check this movie out. Or maybe you're like me, where you've got a YouTube channel yourself, and so you start making a video that you get excited to make because you had so little or no expectations for the film at all. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. We're going to talk about my top 10 most surprising films of 2024. Now, just to be clear, while I am going to be very positive in this video because surprising means a good thing for me, these aren't necessarily the top 10 best of the year. Sure, some of them may cross over to the top 10 best of the year, but that's a video for another time. Unless you're watching this in the future, in which case the top 10 best of 24 is already on my channel. But as of this recording, it's not up yet, so I can still say that. But you guys know this isn't just about my list, it's about your list as well. And so if you had any movies that surprised you in a good way in 2024, well, I would love for you to throw those in the comment section down below. And maybe you don't have 10 films that surprised you this year, maybe you only have a handful. Well, I'd still like to know what those are. It's always fun to go back and forth with you guys in the comment section down below. And finally, if this is the first time you're finding my channel, well, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button. Check out all the different content I have. Maybe you like ranked lists like this or movie reviews, Blu-ray talk. I've got a little bit of everything for movie fans on my channel, so I would love for you to check it out. And with all that said, let's talk about my top 10 most surprising films for 2024. Coming in at number 10 is actually something that's going to be a little different from the rest of the list, and this movie is Heretic. Heretic is a film where I saw the trailer and I was actually excited about it. And where I said earlier, you see the trailers and they kind of give you low expectations. That's why I put Heretic at number 10. It's one of my favorite horror films of the entire year, one of my favorite movies of the entire year, and we'll get to those lists in a little while. But today we're talking about the most surprising movies. And so while Heretic was a film that I was excited to go see, it still surpassed all of my expectations and seriously surprised me with how much I really loved it, because it's a religious horror film. And the thing about religious horror is sometimes it can feel like a slap in the face to those who believe in the religion. Sometimes it can feel like a slap in the face to those who don't believe in the religion. Like, there's a fine line to ride in religious horror, in my opinion, and I feel like this one rode that line perfectly. I thought there was so much to love about this film, especially the incredibly dark, open-ended ending of this film. To me, I just really loved how they put this movie together. Hugh Grant was at an 100 the entire movie, and I was there for it. So Heretic is my number 10 most surprising film because, again, I went in with high expectations, but even those expectations were surpassed. Coming in at number 9, guys, is a huge surprise to me that's even on this list, and it is Terrifier 3. Look, for those of you who may have been following my channel for a while now, you know I'm not the biggest fan of the Terrifier franchise. I reviewed the first movie, wasn't a big fan of it. I reviewed the second film, liked it even less than the first movie. And then you get to the third film and it's set around the holidays and you hear there's going to be children included. And I went in with the lowest of low expectations. I went in expecting to have to defend myself in my YouTube review of this movie just because I was going to dislike it so much. And I was pleasantly surprised by this film. I really enjoyed myself. I do think there are a couple factors. I did watch 1 and 2 really close to each other, and I just wasn't really enjoying what I saw on the screen. And by the time I had watched this film in theaters in 2024, I had kind of come to understand what you were going to get out of the Terrifier franchise. Like, 1 and 2 kind of caught me off guard. Yes, I watched 1, then I watched 2, but I thought 2 would have a little bit more. To me, it had too much. There was too much story going on. There was too much gore for the sake of gore. Wasn't a big fan of all of that. But when you get into part 3, you kind of know what to expect at this point. The story's not going to knock your socks off. The film itself is just going to be a gory mess. But honestly, that's what you've come to expect at this point. And so when I went into this movie ready to really dislike it, I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed it. I thought this movie was a really fun time. I thought Art the Clown was at like the peak of having fun while murdering so many people. And some of the gory scenes in this movie are just absolutely disgusting. but they're a lot of fun. And so if you know what you're getting going into the Terrifier franchise, I feel like you're going to enjoy it a lot more. I didn't really understand it the first two films. I think that's why I was so negative on those. And I'm kind of at the point now where I would like to go back and rewatch the original two Terrifier films. Maybe I'd see them in a different light. But as for Terrifier 3, again, it's one of the most surprising films for the whole year for me because, well, first of all, it's surprising it's even on this list because I dislike those original two movies. But I just had fun with it this time around. I think Christmas time helped with this. I think having a holiday thrown in there that's supposed to be light and happy and giving it this dark tone of art and this demon going around and slicing and dicing people. There were some fun visuals in this movie too. When it came to art making blood snow angels, I thought that was really fun. So I enjoyed a lot of this movie, which was a surprise in and of itself. So it's number 9 on this list. Now at number 8, we have If, which stands for Imaginary Friend. This is a family-friendly film, and I was really not expecting much out of this film. I went and took my kids because I thought, okay, it's going to be a family-friendly film. It's got John Krasinski in it. It's got Ryan Reynolds in it. So between the two of them, this should be fun. But I was really surprised at how emotional this movie was, how emotional it made me feel while watching this film, and it had a lot of laughs. And the one thing that I say time and time again on this channel is that if I take my kids to a movie and they're quoting it or they're talking about it a couple days or a couple weeks later, that's a big deal to me. To me, that'll bump it up a couple notches because I love when my kids are entertained by movies. And so when I take them to a movie like last month when I took them to Moana 2 and nobody has talked about it since we left the theater, I was like, all right, that one didn't really sit well with them, and it wasn't a movie I had a good time with either. But then you have a film like If, where every time someone falls down in my house, somebody yells, Keith, and that's hilarious, and everybody laughs. To me, that's worth the time it took to take my kids, who are 7, 8, and 10, to the theater and watch this film. And to me, that's a genuine surprise for a movie like this. I had a great time with it, very emotional. My kids are quoting it as the months go by. I thought it was a great film, and it's a film I would recommend to people. So If is number 8. At number 7 is another shocker for my most surprising of the year, and it is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, number 2. The first film came out last year, and it was absolutely abysmal. I believe it was my least favorite horror film of the entire year in 2023. So in 2024, when Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2 came out, I had very low expectations. It was also another limited release for the Winnie the Pooh franchise. I had to go on a Thursday, which was just irritating because it started the middle of the work week. My wife and I found time to go see this though, and we had a great time with it. Now, was it movie of the year? No, not in any way. But it is on the most surprising of the year list because this was surprisingly a fun time. I had a great time with Winnie the Pooh in this movie. He actually had a bear trap in this film that he would swing around his head and catch his victims with. And to me, they were putting a little bit of emphasis on the characters they were using instead of, like in the first movie where it was just this horrible plastic Winnie the Pooh mask and he would go around with a baseball bat. Like that, it didn't really fit Winnie the Pooh. But Winnie the Pooh being a bear carrying a bear trap, that worked for me. I also really liked Owl in this movie. He was dark, he was dirty, he was gritty, and he was a lot of fun. I think the only thing holding this movie back a couple points for me was the inclusion of Tigger. Now, I had fun with the Tigger character to a point, but they were clearly sort of making him like a Freddy Krueger type of villain. He's this tiger man thing that's in a boiler room setting at one point, and he's slashing the walls and he's trying to make jokes, and it all came off a little too close to Freddy Krueger, and I think that if the jokes had landed, or if they had spent a little more time developing him, maybe he would have been a little more fun. And again, this could have moved up a couple notches, not only on my most surprising list, but on my overall yearly list for 2024. But even with the Tigger element sort of holding this movie back a little bit, I was still wildly surprised that I even enjoyed this movie, that the filmmakers took the criticism from that first movie, they put their efforts into part 2, and it was a lot of fun. I liked the kills in this movie, I liked some of the character motivations in this movie, and then I liked how they sort of took part 1 and they said, oh, that was a B movie that was made about the massacres from the Winnie the Pooh universe. That wasn't really even something that happened. I like that explanation, sort of explained it away. So Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey number 2 is on my most surprising list this year because honestly, I was surprised I even enjoyed it. So maybe that's a low bar, but I had an enjoyable time with it, so it's number 7. At number 6, we have the film Dee Dee, and Dee Dee is a coming-of-age film, and that's not a genre that I'm typically like looking forward to watching, but man, this movie hit all the nostalgic beats that I needed it to, and I was completely blown away by this thing. It's another one of those movies where the trailer didn't really move the needle for me. I had a few people on my YouTube channel recommend it to me. They were like, oh, you should check this one out, but I waited till it was free to stream on Peacock, and then I sat down one afternoon, checked it out, and again, was completely blown away. Now, the nostalgia factor for this movie is one of the reasons it blew me away. I loved how they used early social media technology from the early 2000s where this movie is set to sort of tell their story. It reminded me of when I was a teenager, because that's right around the time frame that I was becoming a teenager was when this movie was set, and so all the social media beats really hit close to home. There were also just great emotional moments in this movie from your lead character of Dee Dee as he's sort of leaving the transition of being a kid to becoming a teenager. What does that transition look like? You've got your childhood friends who are still kind of immature and goofy. Then there's these older teenagers that you want to be friends with. And that reminded me a lot of myself as well, because when I was about that age was when you wanted to start hanging out with older teenagers. You didn't want to hang out with the people that were considered losers or nerds. And so it's just a weird transition in everybody's life, that time of your life. And I feel like they captured that moment perfectly. So Dee Dee is my number 6 most surprising film of 2024. At number 5, we have a horror film called Strange Darling. Now, when I saw the trailers for this, I thought, this doesn't look good. You got a guy walking around going, here, kitty, kitty, as he shoots different things in a house. You're like, what is this trailer? Like, what are we watching here? It looks like something set up where a girl is being chased by a guy. So I didn't have a lot of expectations for this. Now, I went and saw the film in theaters, and I was completely blown away with the way they were able to tell the story. If they were to have shown this film in a straightforward beginning to end way, then there wouldn't have been much surprising about this film, and I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much. But the filmmakers actually made a great decision to film this movie and then chop it up into different chapters and then show the viewers the chapters completely out of order, which would change the context of the film as the film went along. Now, I won't spoil anything about the movie here, but basically the setup for this film is that there's a girl who has a one-night stand with a guy, and then something led to something, and that guy is now chasing her with a rifle. And so the way the filmmakers are able to frame this film by showing you the chapters out of order, the movie keeps you guessing. Is he the bad guy? Is she the bad guy? Wait, are they both on the run? What's going on here? Why is he shooting at her? Why is she shooting at him? What is going on here? And it keeps you guessing all the way until the final like 2 or 3 chapters of this film. There's something to guess about. And I thought the way they told that film was brilliant, because again, on paper and in the trailer, the way that the movie looks is just kind of bland. It's just kind of like, oh, we've seen this so many times before. But the way that they put this movie out there to the viewer really worked for me. Was a huge surprise. I had a great time with Strange Darling, so that's why it's number 5. At number 4, we have Slingshot. Slingshot is a film starring Casey Affleck, and another film that after I watched the trailer, I had zero anticipation for it. I thought, well, you know what? If I get the time, I'll watch the movie. In fact, the weekend that I went to go see this movie, I was actually with my wife, and we saw the film Afraid first, which was a Blumhouse film that we'll talk about when we talk about horror movies later on this year. And after we watched the movie, we went to Target, and then we were talking, we were like, should we see Slingshot? We both like Casey Affleck, but the trailers don't look very good. I guess we'll see it. And so we barely got there in time. We sit down, we watch the film, and we were both completely blown away with what we were given. Because this is a movie where it's a futuristic sci-fi adventure film where Earth is once again dying and losing its resources, and so Earth has decided to put together a manned space mission that'll get sent past Jupiter on a Slingshot mission to go and start a new planet, eventually bring all the rest of people from Earth to that planet. And so again, on paper, it just kind of seems like a run-of-the-mill sci-fi film that's been done so many times in the past. But when you get to this movie and you start unraveling what's going on, it will blow your mind. They do such a great job holding back certain things from this film until the very end. And even at the very end, it's sort of a choose your own destination for the viewer. And I loved that, because there's some people I've talked to that are like, no, concrete, this is what happened, this is what I choose to believe. But then there'll be the same amount of people on the other side saying, no, concrete, this is what happened, and this is what I choose to believe. So I love movies that'll do that. They start a conversation. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people saw Slingshot. It didn't do very well in theaters, but it's a film I highly recommend, even if you're not a big sci-fi space fan. I mean, yes, you're going to see a little bit of that because they're flying into space, and I know that for some people that's just not their genre, they're going to completely be turned off by that. But the performances you get in this film from all the actors on the spaceship and the story surrounding it, there's an emotional love story surrounding it that really plays in to that twist ending so well. Slingshot is number 4. At number 3, we have a film called Odity. Now, Odity is the definition of a trailer that's released that barely moves the needle. I saw the trailer for this and I thought, it looks like your average breaking and entering horror film. Doesn't look like there's much to this. I remember watching this trailer and then completely forgetting this movie existed at all till somebody recommended it to me. They're like, hey, if you get the chance, go check out Odity. I had the opportunity to go check it out one afternoon, so I went and saw it. And as the movie began, I was like, oh yeah, I think I saw a trailer on this. Like, that's how little the trailer did for me when it came to Odity. But wow, was I blown away. So sometimes trailers just don't do their job, and I would say that Odity is one of those films. Because yes, it does start like your average sort of breaking and entering horror film, and then it takes a wild twist after, I would say, the first 20 minutes of this film, and you were just locked into a different story that leads to some really genuinely great scares. Whether it's jump scares or just an overall uneasy, horrifying feeling being in this house that these characters are in. I think they play with light and sound in this film so well, and I love the way they end this film. I was completely blown away by Odity. I would say it's my most surprising horror film, but there's one more we still have yet to talk about. But this one was a damn good time in the theater, to the point where I was actually kind of scared in the theater, and that's a nice feeling to have when you can feel sort of the tension in the theater room around you while you're watching this movie. It's a pretty unique feeling. So with that said, Odity is number 3. At number 2, we have Civil War, and I highly expected this to be the biggest piece of political propaganda that would come out in 2024, especially because 2024 was an election year. So I was like, all right, I went in with the lowest of low expectations that I could have. Yeah, the trailers looked interesting, the trailers looked fun, and the concept of a civil war within America now, how would that look? I just expected them to lean politically in one direction. However, wow, was I surprised, because this film does one thing that I did not see coming, and it doesn't pick a political side. In fact, it fractions off the United States into 5 different factions that are now all making their way toward DC to the White House to try and get the president and to try and invade Washington, DC. And I thought that was such an interesting concept. But on top of all of that, not only does this movie not pick a political side, but you see the film and you see the events of this horrifying American Civil War play out through the eyes of the reporters that you're following. In this film, you have Kirsten Dunst, who's a reporter. She and her other reporter friends are also making their way to DC to try and interview the president before all these other factions can show up. And as they're on their way from their starting point in this film to Washington, DC, you see time after time how America's just been completely ripped apart. You see some horrifying moments of violence. You also have great moments of tension in this film. One scene where they're at a gas station that just rips you apart, and another scene with Jesse Plemons, who is in the movie for one scene of the film, and oh my gosh, he steals the entire movie. That's not taken away from the other performances in this film, but Jesse Plemons comes in, drops one of the best performances in 2024 in like 10 minutes of time, and then he's gone. And you're just like, what was that performance? That was absolutely incredible. So there were great performances in this film. I loved the way that it was framed so that it wasn't taking a political side. They never even said what kicked off this civil war. You just are dropped in the middle of this civil war and it's go time. I thought every second of this movie was edge of your seat. There's moments in this film where something happens and my entire full IMAX theater crowd was so silent you could hear a pin drop. That's how everyone was glued to this film. Civil War is not only one of the most surprising films of 2024, it's also one of the best films of 2024, and I highly recommend it to everybody. Doesn't matter what side politically that you lean on, I think it's a great cautionary tale for what could happen in America's future if we're all not careful. So with that said, Civil War is number 2. And at number 1, the most surprising film of 2024, did not have a lot of high hopes for it going into it, and it is Late Night with the Devil. Late Night with the Devil stars David Dastmalchian as a late night TV show host in the 70s whose ratings are plummeting. And so in a last-ditch effort on Halloween night in the 70s, he has a Halloween-themed show where all the audience dresses up in costumes, which is pretty creepy. And then he also brings in a skeptic, a person who claims to be a psychic, and he brings in a person who claims to be possessed by a demon. And those are his three people, and they're going to analyze those people on this show. And that story in and of itself is fun, but there's a little bit of backstory to David Dastmalchian's character where his wife had passed away a couple years ago. Then you find out that David Dastmalchian might have been sort of involved with a cult a couple years ago. So there's a lot of different angles this movie brings together. But one of the most unique things about this film is that it's partially a found footage movie, something that they completely hid in the trailer, and they did it so well that it took me about half the movie to realize what they were doing. Because when the show is live on air, you're watching this film like everybody at home. You're watching it through your TV, it's in color, and you're seeing everything like it's being filmed. And then when they cut to commercial break, instead of having to watch commercials, you get black and white behind the scenes footage, which is all shaky cam. And I thought that was such a great way to film this movie, because it sort of looked like they were filming a documentary behind the scenes of this late night talk show host. And then, oh, you're cut back to what happened on TV. And I thought that was such a great way to portray this film. So what surprised me the most about this film and made it the #1 pick for surprising films in 2024, it's the way they were able to film the found footage aspect of this film. It's the performances, especially out of David Dastmalchian, showing that he can carry a full-length film himself. And I loved the different horror storylines that they built seamlessly into this film. Late Night with the Devil is my #1 most surprising film of 2024, and I highly recommend this to all of you. And guys, that's my top 10 most surprising films of 2024. I hope you enjoyed this list. Again, if you've got a list, I'd love for you to throw it down below. It probably won't match mine, and that's totally fine, but I'd love to know what you guys think. And finally, guys, if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button, because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. All right, guys, we got to the end of my top 10 most surprising films of 2024 list, and I loved making this. I enjoy sort of the disappointing videos, the worst of videos, but I always feel kind of bad because I've never personally made a film, and so I feel kind of bad when I just talk badly about a film the whole time. I know you guys enjoy it because those videos always get more views, but I really like talking positively about movies because those are movies that I really enjoyed too. So I don't just have to go over all the things I didn't like. I get to talk about things I really enjoyed. So making this video was a fun time is the point I'm trying to make here. But with that said, if you like this kind of video and you want to watch more of my best and worst of 2024, well, I've got all of my best and worst movies of 2024 playlist right there, and I've got all of my 2024 movie reviews right there.